Hello everyone. In today's video, we will be learning about the basics of Python. Now this is going to be a series of videos in which I'll cover all the basic concepts of Python, and eventually you will be able to write your own Python source code and run it. So in today's video, we're going to be covering output, numbers, operators, and strings. Now before we get into all that, let's answer a basic question. Why Python? Python is one of the world's most popular programming languages. It is easy to understand and it is widely used as an introductory programming language. All the knowledge that you gain by learning Python can be used in many other programming languages. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So today I'm going to be using, or throughout the series, I'm going to be using the program is Python Online Compiler. Now there are many other IDEs or integrated development environments that you can use. For example, there is Visual Studio Code, which works quite well with Python. However, for this series, I'm going to be using this online compiler. Now, once you are on this page, and I will provide a link in the description of the video as well, let's start by outputting something to the console, which is on the right hand side. So on the left hand side is where you type all your code, and on the right hand side is where what your code will run, and the outputs will be shown on the right hand side of your screen here. So let's start. To output something in Python, you have to use the print keyword. So we'll type print and then parentheses, and within the parentheses, if we want to print text, we have to put quotation marks. Now whatever that comes inside of a quotation mark, any text that comes in there is called a string in Python. So let's type a basic string. I'm going to call this hello world, and here we go. This is our hello world print statement. Now the semicolon at the end is required as part of the syntax of certain programming languages. In Python it is not required, so our code will run perfectly fine even without the semicolon. However, I like to put the semicolon there just for readability and clarity. So I'm going to run this code, and as you can see, hello world is printed out to the console. Let's take a look at numbers and operators now. So we have now printed out a basic line of text in Python. Let's take a look at numbers and operators. So I'm going to delete the code and clear my console. Now there are two different types of numbers in Python. You have integers, which are whole numbers. Anything like this without a decimal point is an integer. And you have decimals. And in Python, decimal numbers are called floating point numbers or floats. So these are the numbers that we'll be performing arithmetic operations with. Now you can head over to the W3 School's website, and on their Python operators page, you can see a list of all the different types of operators that Python has. Today we're going to be focusing on the arithmetic operators, but we will be talking about assignment operators, comparison operators, and others later on. So let's take a look at the different arithmetic operators that are available to us in Python. If we type an expression in the shell or the console here, like if I type 5 plus 2 and I press enter, it outputs the value, which is 7. If I type 5 minus 2, it outputs the value, which is 3. So the plus and minus obviously do addition and subtraction. We can use a star operator in order to do multiplication, and we can use the slash operator to do division. Now division works slightly differently in Python. So if we do 10 divided by 5, we get 2.0. So dividing these two integers gives us a floating point number. If we divide 9 and 5, we get a floating point number. And so whenever we use one slash to divide numbers in Python, it is always going to output a floating point number. Now if we don't want a floating point number, we just want a whole number, one way we can do this is by using floor division. To do floor division in Python, we just use two slashes, forward slashes. And what this does is it divides the two numbers. So this will divide 9 and 5, which will give us 1.8, and it will round the answer down no matter what. So even if it is 1.8, 1.9, it's not going to round to 2, it will round down to 1. So this should give us 1. And so that is what floor division does. But floor division is useful when you know that the result is going to be a whole number. Floor division is also useful when you want to round the number down. So if I put 10 and 5, if I hit floor divide 10 and 5, we get 2 and we don't get the point 0. Now there are two other main arithmetic operators in Python that I would like to talk about. We have the exponentiation operator, which are the two stars. So if I put 5 and then star star 2, this means 5 to the power of 2, which is going to output 25. We also have the modulus operator, which finds the remainder of two numbers. So if we have 10 modulus 4, this is going to find the remainder of this expression. So 10 modulus 4, the remainder is 2, because 4 times 2 is 8 and the remainder is 2, because 10 minus 8 is 2. And if we put 10 modulus 5, we get 0, because 10 divided by 5 is 2 and there is no remainder. So these are the basic arithmetic operators in Python. So now let's take a look at printing these out to our shell instead of typing them in the console itself. So here I'm going to type print, and now I'm going to type an expression. Let's say I want to do 5 plus 2. Right, I'm going to run this and it outputs the result. Now we have an expression here. If I put it in quotation marks, let's see what happens. It prints out the expression, because as I mentioned earlier, anything inside quotation marks is a string, and a string is considered to be plain text in Python. This means that whenever we put anything inside these quotation marks, Python interprets it as plain text and it thinks that we just want exactly that to be printed to the screen. In this case, we want the value to be outputted. So if we want a value to be outputted, if we want this expression to be solved, we need to get rid of those quotation marks. This will tell Python that, oh, okay, these are integers and this is an operator, and the programmer wants me to find the value or find the answer to this expression, and so it outputs the result. And now we can also put together complex expressions, such as we can put together many of these operators, and Python will solve this expression using BEDMAS. So if we run this, we get a negative answer, because this was just a random expression that I made up, but Python solves this expression using BEDMAS. So now let's take a deeper look at strings. So I'm going to put a test string here, and if I run this, it just prints out this is a string. Now here, let's say I want to put quotation marks around the word string. I'm just going to put quotation marks here. Let's run it and see what happens. We get an error because this does not work in Python. I am declaring the string using double quotation marks. Because of this, I cannot use double quotation marks inside of the string, because this first double quotation mark makes Python think that this itself is a string and this is a string, and so Python does not know what this random word string is in between. So if I want to add quotation marks around string, there are two ways to do this. I can either replace the double quotation marks with single quotation marks, which will work because I'm not using single quotation marks to create the string. Had I used single quotation marks to create the string, this would result in the same error. Another way to do this would be to use the backslash. I can put a backslash and a quotation mark on either side of the word string. The backslash tells Python that whatever comes after it is just plain text. So now if I run this, you'll see that there are quotation marks around the word string and we don't get an error. Now let's say we want to output a multi-line string. So if I want another string, let's say on another line. So there are two ways to do this. The first way is to have another print statement saying this is another string, and This works. This prints out another string on another line. But what if I want to have a gap in between them, an empty line? For that, I would have to put an empty print statement in between these in order to have an empty line. And if I want to have multiple empty lines, well, I'll have to copy this and paste this multiple times. And only that will give us many empty lines in between the two strings. So this is not a very efficient way to solve this problem, and there is a much easier way to do this. So I'm going to cut this from here, delete this print statement, and I'm just going to paste this here. So if we want a new line, inside of the string itself we can put a \n. Make sure you don't confuse a backslash with a forward slash. This is a backslash and this is a forward slash. So there's a difference between a backslash and a forward slash. Now, putting \n tells Python that whatever comes after should be printed on a new line. So if we run this, as you can see, the first sentence is printed on the first line and the second sentence is printed on the second line. If we want a gap between the two, all we have to do is put many \n's in between, and as you can see, we have a large gap between the two strings now. So now that we have looked at numbers and operators separately and strings separately, let's take a look at how we can put them together. Let's say I want to evaluate an expression. So inside the quotation marks, I'll put 10 modulus 4 or 10 modulus 3 equals. Now after the equal sign, I want to output a result. Now I can't just put 10 modulus 3 here, because as you will see, it just prints exactly that out. As we saw earlier, anything that comes inside the quotation marks is considered to be plain text in Python. So how would we do this? So in Python, if we want to put a result or evaluate an expression and concatenate it with a string, or put it together with a string, we will use concatenation. And so just as I use the word now, concatenate means to put things together. So in order to do this, we can use the plus operator. And here we can put in our expression modulus 3. Now let's run it and see what happens. Oh, we get an error. So the reason we get an error here is because you can only concatenate a string to a string. You can't concatenate a string to an integer. And therefore, this does not work. So now there are two ways to solve this problem. We can either just remove the plus and use a comma instead. Doing this will allow us to put the result together with the rest of the string, and using a comma automatically adds a space, so we don't need this extra space after the equal sign. And now if we run this, we get a nice output statement. The second way to do this will be to use the plus sign, but then we'll have to convert this expression into a string. So in order to do this, we will use the keyword str and put brackets around the expression. What this does is it evaluates 10 modulus 3, converts that value to a string, and then concatenates it with the rest of the string. Using the plus operator does not put a space after the equal sign. As you can see here, there is no space. So in order to add the space, I'll put a space here. And as you can see, we get a nice final output result. So that is how concatenation works in Python. So that was a basic overview of output statements, which is the print statement, numbers, operators, and strings in Python. In the next video, we'll be taking a look at comments and variables, which are two very important concepts in programming. So I hope you learned something from this video, and I hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time.